Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and holy smokes, have we got a big show here for you. Last year, pretty quiet after the Michigan game, sitting around waiting, obviously, to see if they get in. Bucks got into the CFP last year, and then it was a little bit of a calm before that Peach Bowl storm. This year, whoa, a lot of things happening. Guys sliding into the portal, maybe some guys sliding out of the portal, zip in, zip out. We'll get into all of that. Who's the starting quarterback going to be for next year? Will the Buckeyes be big game hunting? We're going to talk a little bit about the Army-Navy game. We have the first Biletnikoff winner since Terry Glenn. We've got our tailgate talk a little bit with the questions from the listeners, which that's going to be fantastic. The stuff that you guys want to know the answers to. And whoa, there was a lot of stuff coming at us thick and fast. But Schlegs, we're going to start right here. I think Ohio State Michigan is the greatest rivalry in all of sport. However, I think the greatest game you can ever watch and be a part of is the Army-Navy game. It is something that they've continued to move back and move back and move back. So it is a standalone game, the final game of the college football season. So the eyes of the country are on it. They did a great piece with Lee Corso, who coached at Navy. Yep. You know, those teams aren't just the teams of Annapolis and West Point. I mean, they're the teams of America. You throw Air Force in there as well. And I've gotten a chance to go to two Army-Navy games, both in Philly. This year it was up in Foxborough outside of Boston. Really great site. Army downs Navy 17-11, an iconic goal line stand. Last year we had the double overtime. We've had two great games in a row here, Schlegs. Like, as being a former person, a former player at the Air Force Academy, and being in these games where you're playing the other service academies, what is this like?
Great question, Bob. So I'll say this. I'm very proud of this. When I was at the Air Force Academy, I was 4-0.
Yes.
2-0 versus Navy, 2-0 versus Army. We won the Commanders in Chief Trophy. Also 2-0 versus rivals while playing at the Ohio State University. So I'm 6-0 versus rivals. I understand rivalry games. But this one's special. The Army-Navy game, somebody put out a quote, which is, I think they said it on air, and it was, this is the only game that those playing are willing to sacrifice their lives for those watching. And that's really what it is. And when you get into them as a player at a service academy, it's what you do, right? You want competition. You want iron sharpens iron, and you just happen to do it on the battlefield. You want to be tested. You want a hard fight. And the game's always about execution, toughness, and resolve. And that's what you saw in this game. I mean, last year it was like till 2 minutes in the fourth quarter that you got your first pass of the game. Yeah. This time, Navy's quarterback throws 26 times for 179 yards. And Army really dictated it and owned this game. They were up at one point, 17-3, I believe. They had a scoop and score for a touchdown. Navy ended up losing the game 17-11. They took a safety at the end of the game off that goal line stand. But that's what it came down to, literally a game of inches. There's a bunch of different plays that that could have gone either way. There was a punt that could have been muffed. It could have hit the guy's foot, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't happen, but hard-fought game. It came to the very end. And again, being a guy that was in those type of locker rooms, knowing what those coaches are about, it's just special to watch that. It's something that you miss. I'm talking to guys that I played with at the Air Force Academy about it. And like, guess what? I never lost with these, whatever expletives, that I put on there. And I'm like, how do we get the trophy? And it's like, well, we needed Navy to win that because Air Force won it last year. That's what I'm thinking about. Army beat Air Force. They had 6 turnovers in that game. Air Force did, and Army beat them 20-3, which is terrible.
Air Force was undefeated coming into that game this year.
I know, too. It was terrible. It was terrible. But anyways, I mean, that's why you love watching these games, because it's not just what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? The military obligations, the academic obligations, the athletic
obligations. You really thrived out there, Schlegs. They said that you were, the most outstanding cadet. What did they give the cadet of the year for the best? I don't even know how you would define it. Just the most compliant cadet of all. Yeah, I mean, getting everything done. Always out there for your lineup in the morning, always shaved. I mean, your buttons are looking good. Your bed is made. You're ready to rock each and every day. We know that was you out at the Air Force Academy.
I was kind of
Alex Renshaw.
I was kind of grimy, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Like they'd come in and look at your clothes. Well, guess what? The clothes that were always on the hanger were always on the hanger. I just wore the same clothes over and over and over and over again, and like ironed them and like folded them. And my bed was always made because I slept on top of it. And then I put the stuff up and it went underneath my, my dresser so I could just put it on there. I never had to make anything. Again, that's just problem solving. That's what you do while you're there. Also, while you're trying to gain weight, Shawshank Redemption style, you can't have contraband when you're young there. And that was food, right? You couldn't have it. So I had a Coleman cooler underneath my desk with a box cut out with like books on the front of it so nobody could see. And inside there, I had chicken that I would take from the chow hall, put in there. I had one of those little heater crock pot looking things. And I'd put a bunch of ramen noodle and have ramen noodle and chicken and chocolate milk at night, just trying to get extra calories in. Guess what? Great time. Being at our service academy, it's things that have stuck with me my entire life. Integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. And I love the clip at the end when Army's coach came in there. And
gosh, man, that's powerful.
And that it is powerful because those guys live it on a daily basis. And, hats off to them. I appreciate the service that they give and the things that they've given up to take this on. And it's just, you just got to go out there and respect those guys for everything that they do.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Got a chance to go 2019 before COVID, went last year, took my oldest son, RJ, last year for his 13th birthday. And it was awesome. My father-in-law served in the Navy during Vietnam, and he had his old pea coat that he could no longer get into, Schlegs, but it's Navy. It had the little anchor buttons on it. And my son wore it. And some of the older admirals that came around, they're like, oh, I have one just like that, from 45 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever, when I, had enlisted, went to the academy. And so you go there. What's one of the greatest scenes is watching the march in. And, they announced, the squadron leader, where they're from. There's a number of guys from Ohio. You feel like most of the academies, and especially a lot of the servicemen and women, are made up from people from Texas and then a lot of the rest of the Midwest. I mean, that's what comprises a large portion of it. And so you hear people from Ohio and Texas and everything else. The tailgate scene is remarkable because it is some of the best trash talk, but in the most respectful way. And I would say this, it is the most fit tailgate scene you will ever see. Very few people that don't look like they could go bust out a 5K in like 20 minutes. I mean, even with like a beer in their hand, it is tremendous, but it's just a remarkable scene. And like you said, you talk about everything that goes into it. There's no NIL, there's no transfer portal, there's no nonsense. Like, those dudes are out there playing an old school football game the right way. And that's the best we have to offer. As you go and look at our country, when you watch that, it is something that's powerful and I love it. I recommend anybody. It is a bucket list thing. And I never really, had a lot of, not respect. I didn't think it was that huge until I went, and I was like, gosh, this is awesome.
Yep.
And just to see everything that happens around it is truly, truly tremendous. So outside of how the game ended and who wins and loses, everybody is a winner on that day because those young men will be serving our country for years after that game. So that being said, we're moving on to some of the stuff that's happened. The transfer portal, Schlegs, holy smokes, what is in there? It must be the land of milk and honey. We will tell you who's in, who's out, what the impact is for the Bucs, and how that's going to all play out next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and it's portal season. Schlegs' favorite place, sliding on in there. I mean, Schlegs, I don't know if it's like, I was searching around the Woody the other day, and I didn't know if there was like a book that you would pull and like a shelf would open up and you'd slide in the portal that way. If it was more of a Ghostbusters thing where they have to shoot you with the little guns and then they press the little floor deal and it pulls up and flies you down into the portal. I don't know how it all works, but I'm telling you, man, everybody was getting in here this year and seems like the good thing to do. And so everybody's got their own reasons for getting in. And so I try not to just generally lump everyone in together. Everyone getting in and leaving the team, there's going to be a different impact on that and how that ultimately looks.
Yep.
But I think if you look at this, a large number of players, like, and we can run through this real quick by order, essentially starting with November 28th, Amari Abor hopped in, then you had Cam Martinez, Victor Cutler, the offensive lineman who transferred in, running back Evan Pryor, corner Ryan Turner, Parker Lewis, cornerback Jair Brown, safety Kai Stokes, who started off his career really strong, then Kyle McCord, Jacob James, Reed Carrico, Julian Fleming, and finally Chip Tradham. I think that's all of it, 13, 14 guys. Last year, Schlegs, we didn't see many guys get in the portal. This year, a lot more. But outside, and we'll isolate some of these, outside of, maybe Kyle and Chip, Julian, a lot of the other guys where you felt like getting pinched. They weren't going to be able to be the starter, or there was guys starting and maybe they were coming back, and the young guys were kind of starting to overtake them. So Ohio State, I still think, is a little heavy on scholarships right now. And this isn't unique to Ohio State because I think there's well over 1,000 guys in the portal. Someone told me it's almost 2,000, which I would think that's a little high, but it's well into the 10%.
Yeah.
And so, what does this say to you when you see this happening?
Oh man, I mean, we talked about last week ad nauseum about it. And again, here's the deal: everybody's different. It's just roster management, and guys are seeing where they are. They're seeing themselves stack up against other people. They're seeing younger guys develop. They're seeing, do I have an opportunity? They're also seeing, all right, well, I've already been a starter. I got to continue to keep competing to be a starter. Maybe I want to go somewhere else, but like that doesn't necessarily make sense all the time. To help you in your aspirations potentially to be in the NFL. And so those things like this, like, again, like you said, Bob, everybody's different. Everybody has their reasons. So it's like, hey, thank you for your time. And you go. And I think part of the portal process and part of the recruiting process is we're going to train everybody the same. We want nothing but the best for you. Our job is to maximize your value and extend your career and make you better here at The Ohio State. And if this is a place that you don't necessarily want to be at or want to compete at or have those type of things, then this isn't the place for you. And maybe you got to go look somewhere else. But that also doesn't mean that they go somewhere else. I think that's the one thing too, that people don't, just because you put your name in the portal doesn't mean that you're not coming back.
It's kind of like a raffle, Schlegs. I mean, you don't have to, you may put a ticket in, but it doesn't mean that your ticket gets pulled on the way out on the other side. Like there's some issues here and some differences with a lot of that. I mean, I think the couple that were the most surprising.
Let's talk about it.
Obviously, we'll get to Kyle last. I think that's obviously the most impactful when your starting quarterback hops in. But Julian Fleming, guy who had another year left, could have went to the NFL. I think coming back, Schlegs, you look at him, he was probably going to be third, fourth option again, regardless. I think Marvin's probably gone. I know he's struggling, and I think he truly wants to come back, win a Big Ten championship, beat Michigan. But either way, whether he comes back or not, got some really talented young guys. So Julian, who's a good player, great program guy, probably is going to get paid in the portal and go somewhere else. It could be a featured guy. Maybe that helps his draft stock a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Bob, because it's like you have Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, Ballard. I mean, like you got dudes, man, in that room, and they've
probably Emeka's coming back. Emeka's, I think, coming back as well. So
if you have that, again, third or the fourth guy, because you got to get those guys reps too. Remember, competitive excellence. So if you want to be featured to raise that draft stock, then guess what? Potentially going to Nebraska might be a great fit. You're a featured guy, and where you have a 6th, 7th round grade or a free agent grade, all of a sudden you pop up and now you're a mid-round draft pick because you had the opportunities and they saw you on film. That's great. That's a great opportunity.
And then we talked, one of the other ones that stung a lot was Chip Trainum, Akron guy, went to Arizona State, came back to maybe play linebacker due to injuries. He's thrust into the running back room and has done a great job. And I love Chip, man. He's a very respectful young man. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a great leader, and even losing it like on the field. And I think that this speaks well because for potentially Travion coming back, we'll get to that a little bit more. But, you heard his statement, you want to make sure he was going to get his value. I mean, I think it might be rumored he's going to Kentucky. Mark Stoops, obviously Youngstown guy. I think they'll probably compensate him heavily for going there. And he was going to probably be the 1-2 punch, regardless of whether Trey came back or not. And they were rounding him out. He was doing some fullback, some H-back stuff. There was a lot of different things adding value. I mean, that kind of stings because I think he would have probably been a captain next year. Schlegs, he's an Ohio guy, and you know how much this means to him. So even losing his on-field production, I think more now a thin running back room, with Mayan leaving and Evan Pryor, I think more of it is even, the fact that his leadership is going to be gone.
Yeah, well, for sure, that's going to impact him. But also, I think about what Ohio State was trying to do with him. And some people could say, he could be a RB1 somewhere else. I mean, to me, just looking at his fit, looking at his status, you look at a guy that could potentially be a middle round to late round draft pick that's more in the form of Kyle Yurcik from the 49ers. There's a niche role for that.
Perfect. That is a perfect analogy for him right there.
He could be, again, you can go in the NFL, you could be on special teams, you could be a special teams captain, you could be the PP guy, you could be a guy that comes in on offenses and is a fullback, is a third down guy. Like there's so many different ways that you could utilize Chip, because Chip's a football player. That's why I respected the most out of him. He's just a football player, a lot like Kate Sober, just a football player. And you want guys like that on your team, and then potentially to go somewhere else just for a little bit more value. The value of being a captain at Ohio State and what that carries from the state of Ohio, down the road, it's going to pay dividends, let alone what you potentially get from the NFL. So I don't like to see him leave, but we all have our reasons for leaving. And guess what? You say that's okay. Go get that. I wish he was there because, again, to you, I want his leadership. I want his tenacity. I want football players like Chip Trayanum on your football team. That's why that kind of stings a little bit.
So I failed to mention one other guy, Joe Royer, also leaving, tight end. And Cincinnati kid. Joe is as talented as anybody you're going to find. He's had some personal stuff. He's had some injury things. He's getting in the portal. It's rumored he might be going back home, potentially Cincinnati, something like that. And I could understand that. But Joe is immensely talented. I think would have played a ton next year as well. He's physical. He's a physical specimen. He's a great route runner. I think he can be a really good blocker. He's 255, 260 pounds, and he moves as well as anyone. Safeties rave about him. So I think that is a loss potentially as well. But sometimes guys need a fresh start, so you get it. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're getting to the most important position. I think that was the most surprising. Kyle McCord leaving. Who is going to replace him? Do they go big game hunting in the portal? Is there someone out there that's a one-year fix, or do they roll with the guys currently on the roster? We'll talk about all that next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show with my man, Anthony Schlegel. Welcome back into the show. And now I think it's one of the topics that everybody has been buzzing about, this entire week, the quarterback situation at Ohio State. Why did Kyle decide to leave? Where does he ultimately go? Who is going to be the answer for the Buckeyes next year, Schlegs? Is that someone currently on the roster, or is it not? And so I guess we'll start here with the inception, of when Kyle chose to leave and this opened up. As a coach, you have loyalty to the players, you have loyalty to the team, and you have a loyalty to the competition. And trying to balance that can be tough. And, Kyle, I think, played good this year. He played well. He wasn't elite, but there was some room for him to continue to grow. He's never going to be Braxton Miller athletically, but he doesn't necessarily need to be. He can grow as a leader, maybe not the most fiery guy. And I think as we start to look at this, you see Ryan and his personality coming out, and usually coaches, especially quarterback coaches, want somebody that's kind of similar to them, that reflects their personality and their fight and fire on the field with them. And people ask, how did this happen? Was Kyle he just leave? Was he worried he wouldn't get a starting job? I'm like, I guarantee you, him and Ryan had a conversation, and maybe Kyle's, family advisory, I don't know. He's already got a team now. But if you want assurances that you're going to be the starting quarterback for the 2024 season in December of 2023, and you played well, but I can't sit here and tell you what's going to go. We got some good young guys, and there's guys always out there in the portal. Like, I don't think any coach who's going to be honest with their player could sit there and tell them that.
Bobby, it's competitive excellence. The portal has made the game of college football more like the NFL, and every single year you got to go earn your spot. Now, again, there's guys in the NFL that they paid X amount of dollars to, right? Like, have really large contracts. However, guess what? If you don't win games, you get fired. Same thing that holds true at Ohio State. If you don't win games, if you don't beat Michigan, if you don't win, the team up north, if you don't win the Big Ten, guess what? You're gonna get fired. Like, that's just what happens. So if that's the case, competitive excellence is the number one standard. And I think with this too, you see, I was just watching the Kansas City Chiefs Buffalo game. Competitors, man. Joe Burrow, competitor. We're not saying that you got to be just a rah guy, right? Like JT Barrett was a very vocal type leader. AJ Hawk, who you and I play with, very quiet leader, just played with his presence. Yeah. And there's all different types. However, the number one thing is that they are a competitor and they love competition. They thrive in it. They want it. They want to embrace the friction. And so that's what you have. You have a room with Devin Brown, Liam Keeholtz, Aaron Nolan coming in, and Kyle McCord. And guess what, Kyle? You have the leg up on everybody because you're 12-1 as a starter. You've been in the system. You're the more veteran guy. You've threw for over 3,000 yards. You have 25
made some big
touchdowns.
plays and big moments.
100%. I mean, you won on the road at Notre Dame. Like, you have all the stuff in your wheelhouse. Now get into the weight room, get into the film room, do all the things necessary that you need to do to continue to grow and allow that friction, that objective adversity to come through so that you can be better in 24 than you were in 23 and let the chips fall where they may. Like, but again, that's what you want on your team. And if you want that assurance, if you want that guarantee, then maybe Ohio State and Ryan Day as your coach is not for you.
What did you used to say, Schlegs? You could take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed. Guaranteed pizza.
That's Tommy Boy. That's
I thought that was you. Okay.
That was not me. That was not me. They were talking about brake parts and guarantees. However, I would just say that to me is what kind of went on here. And guess what? That is okay if you want to go somewhere else. The bad thing about that, again, as you go through this, and also a guy that transferred, very different time of transferring because we had to sit out a year anyways. That is no longer the case.
Well, and you were basically getting kicked out of Air Force too.
No, I was not. I was not.
You're on your way out.
I was on thin ice. I was on thin ice. I still would have made it, but it's okay. Anyways, but like that being said, guess what? That's fine. So go find that fit. Maybe there wasn't a mesh. Go get it. Tip of the cap. Thank you for what you did here at Ohio State. On to the next. And that's what is really exciting about this Cotton Bowl is that you have Devin Brown and Lincoln Keyholtz, and now we get to see, a fair share of what could potentially be. That's what this game is, guys, in the Cotton Bowl. It is an evaluation as to who you got coming back for 24. That's what it is, man. And so I'm excited to watch them play. Then I'm excited for spring football and fall camp to have three younger guys, a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt freshman, and a true freshman in Nolan coming in and just letting the competition happen, because that's what you want.
It's interesting because I seeing a little bit early on bowl practice, and they're just doing a lot of individual work and some generic stuff now. Like, I've seen growth from Lincoln. Honestly, I've seen a lot of growth from Devin too. And like, when you feel empowered, like, hey, this is your opportunity, you're getting another shot. I think you might be impressed with that. And so everybody looks at them, and maybe those guys are the answer in 2025. But in 2024, people look to the portal and you see like Cam Ward out of Washington State in there, Riley Leonard out of Duke, Dante Moore out of UCLA, Will Howard out of K-State, Dylan Gabriel out of Oklahoma, who already is committed, I believe, to Oregon. And so I think people are starting to wonder, like, are the Bucks going to go big game hunting? You're going to go try to find a guy to come in for 1 year. And we've watched teams have success with that. And you just got to get them in early and get them, assimilated into the group and the system. But I don't get a sense from there that that's going to probably be the route that Ohio State's going to go. I think Schleg's the guys that, they like, outside of something kind of happening, are the dudes that are on the roster now. And so the thought that there's some savior out there, the Messiah is going to roll in on Palm Sunday here, and all of a sudden we're going to be good and riding the donkey with the palm leaves, like get us to the national championship. Like, I don't foresee that happening. Now, maybe that changes, but it seems like maybe what you got is what you're rolling with.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, again, it's resources. And if you like the guys that you have in the room, and again, this is a big thing with the portal. When you go out and find a guy in the portal, when they come in, they got to match the culture that you want, right? And I wrote some things down. It's like, do they love football? That's the number one thing. When you're looking for people, do they love football? Do they want to work? Are they accountable? Do they give great attitude and effort? That's just by press and play. You can see that this guy has a great attitude and gives great effort just by the way he plays and competes in the game of football. And you take all that into consideration, and then will they fit into the culture of Ohio State with the already current guys that you have? And this is the thing. As you go through this, it's, what do we need? Well, that's predicated upon who is getting graded that could potentially leave. Does Trevion leave? Does JTT leave? Does Jack Sawyer leave? Does, like all these different guys that could potentially get graded and be a high draft pick, do they go or do they stay? And then if that's the case, if they decide to stay, me personally, utilize that NIL money for them, but also maybe to get one or two key people, whether it's an offensive lineman, whether if it's a defensive tackle or a defensive end, predicated upon who leaves that you need to go find that comes in and gives you depth or gives you competition in that room from a veteran perspective. That's how I kind of see it playing out, especially if you like the people in the room at the quarterback.
Well, so we've got some bowl games we're going to talk about. We got the awards, and then also maybe, like you said, Schlegs, who could potentially be coming back as maybe force some of those other guys into the portal. Sure. We'll get into all that next right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. Maybe you're watching us on Bally's, maybe you're watching on YouTube. Hey, you like it, continue to watch, subscribe, gobble it up as much as you can. We appreciate your support, just like we appreciate Marvin Harrison Jr. Fourth in the Heisman Trophy voting, got a chance to go to New York, and I think everybody knew, like, once he got there, he wasn't going to win it. You had the three quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., who are obviously there, and Jaden Daniels wins it, but fantastic job by Marvin getting there. And so that keeps the, a nice streak alive for Ryan for getting guys to New York. I think that's great for recruiting. And then he does something that nobody's done, I believe, since 1995, I think, is the year Terry Glenn won the Biletnikoff.
Yep.
So it has been quite a long time. My gosh, what is that, Schlegs?
95?
95 to now?
To 05 to 15, that's 20. That's 28 years.
28 years. 28 years since Terry Glenn, the only Biletnikoff winner in Ohio State history, now ultimately gets a little buddy over there to hang out with. And so that's huge for Marvin Harrison Jr. to ultimately bring to home that type of hardware.
Yeah, I mean, this Heisman Trophy one was very difficult for Marvin. Again, when you're a wide receiver, when you're not a quarterback, if you're a running back, right, you have to rely upon other people. You have to rely on your offensive line. You have to rely on the quarterback to get you the football. Guys, he had 1,200 yards. He only had 67 receptions. I mean, Braylon Edwards or whatever put out some tweet about him. Like, what? That's what it takes to win? Like, are you kidding me? You had 30 more receptions than Marvin. If Marvin had that, he would have had like 1,600 yards. I mean, he averaged 18.1 per catch, guys. I mean, he had 8 games over 100 yards. He had the most contested catches of anybody in the country. And I would say this, honestly, probably underutilized this year. And I remember this from the 2022 Michigan game where I'm sitting there in the stands just listening to fans like throw it to Marvin. I'm like, that's the best play we got. That's 100% accurate.
Yeah,
I understand where you're coming from. And you know what, though? So probably a little underutilized, but the guy's an absolute freak. And then as he goes, he's 6'4", 205, can run for days, has great ball skills. And most importantly, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good human. Like the best thing about the award ceremony, guys, is the dudes that were representing the Heisman are good freaking dudes.
Yeah.
That's what I got from him. I'm like, you got Bo Nix out there babysitting. You got Michael Penix Jr., who's had multiple season-ending injuries, again, transfers and has this year. You got Jalen Daniels, who transferred from Arizona State to LSU and had this year.
How about that? All 3 of the quarterbacks are transferred.
It's crazy. And again, it's a game of fits. We talked about this in the NFL, Bob. It's all about fits and opportunities, and all these guys transferred left. They got fits and opportunities, a new lease on life, and they went out there and they performed. But guess what? You still had to go compete. You still had to go win the job, and you still had to go execute. All these guys did it. I came away walking away like, man, those are great representatives of their universities. But most importantly, I'm super proud that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Buckeye. Boom.
You think, he hasn't committed to leaving. He's talked about his desire to want to make sure he beats Michigan, wins the Big Ten championship. People think that he's coming back. I don't believe that to be the case. But I think that there is a chance. Like, I don't think that he's absolutely gone. I think that this could be a little bit of a struggle for him. I would say probably 90-10 that he's probably gone, but there still is that sliver that he could potentially come back. And so with that, we start talking about some of the other guys, I think, Schlegs, that could potentially come back. You look on the defensive side of the ball, I think there's a lot of momentum for both Jack Sawyer and JT to come back. I think Lathan Ransom might be coming back. Denzel Burke, potentially could be coming back. We'll see how a lot of these guys are waiting on draft grades to kind of see how it goes, but some of them, they want to be first-round draft picks. And there's a big difference between being picked 15 or 20 and being picked 45 and 50,
right,
dollar-wise. So if you can get some NIL money in college, like, come back, get a chance to improve your grade, win some more, maybe do some things that you haven't done, which would be massive. I mean, I think Donovan Jackson, there might even be momentum for him to return if he's going to get potentially another year. And then Jordan Hancock, who had a great year, we were worried like maybe he's leaving because he's played so well. If he could return, so I think if you get a lot of those guys back, you look at what you lost in the portal, I think you could have a really, really nice team on the defensive side of the ball for sure.
And here's the thing, too. Veteran team on a already really good defense, right? Top 5 defense in the country, all those guys back. One more, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Bob, when you talked about the why. Like these are business decisions, okay? Yeah. So when you go through it, and let's use AJ as an example, and yourself, Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 first-round draft picks, right? So you go through, and really, where was AJ at the end of his junior year? Was he predicted to be a top 5 pick? I don't think so.
Probably not. Probably a first rounder, but not
probably
top
a first
5.
rounder, right? But then you come back, right, yourself. You're probably right on the bubble, Bob. But then you had monster games that year and propelled you up to be a first-round draft pick. I know myself. Like, I wasn't even on the thing, right? But then, again, I get to play between 2 dudes that are first-round draft picks. We had 5 first-round draft picks on that team, right? So as everybody else stock goes up, guess what? The other people's stock go up. And that's part of it when you think about these decisions, what NIL has done. It eliminates the fact that I got to go get that money now by going into there, potentially being a 2nd or a 3rd or a 4th-round pick, to then, you know what, I'm going to stay, accrue some NIL money, and then have my stock go up because why? I know the defense. I can play faster in the defense. I know the competition that's coming. Your experience, 100%, Bob. Keep talking.
Especially at the back end, and the loss of Lathan Ransom late in the year. I mean, you go look at the 2 critical plays: the Corum touchdown run, and then the touchdown pass from McCarthy. Those would have been plays that Lathan Ransom would have been a player of impact on that. And I think the play turns out differently just because he's played more football. Like Sonny Styles is a great player. He got a little ahead of it, over the top of the ball, gave up leverage, gets out the back door. And Malik Hartford is going to be a really good young safety. You know, doesn't cut in time, turns his head. Like Lathan Ransom's played a lot of football. And so when you have guys who have played a lot, Schlegs, like you said, who have seen a lot, it makes it infinitely easier out there to make adjustments, to understand what's coming, to anticipate. And so you can continue to get better and improve, which at the next level, they really don't develop you like that. You're coming in, like, let's see how good you are and what you're going to ultimately look like. But if you're not showing early returns, like sometimes, hey, we're on to the next, we're moving on. Before we get out of here,
it's true.
Some other news in this other news: Walter Camp All-American, Marvin Harrison first team, Denzel Burke, Tyleek Williams, potential second teamers. You think Tyleek coming back, like that could be a really, really nice defensive line. And then as a whole, the Big Ten had the most first team All-Americans, Walter Camp with 5. So that's pretty nice with them getting that done as well. And so we'll take a quick commercial break, and we're going to dive into our favorite segment, the Tailgate Talk, presented by All Lines Technology. That's coming up next, where we answer your questions from what you want to know straight off of the X Machine. This is the Bobby Carpenter Show with my man Anthony Schlegel on the Big Play Network. All right, welcome back into the show, and this is our favorite segment that we do each and every week. It's Tailgate Talk, presented by All Lines Technology. All Lines Technology is your trusted IT solutions partner between Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and all places in between. Schlegs, tell them about what they do.
All Lines Technology attacks and dominates in these areas: Microsoft services, cybersecurity services, especially if you're shopping online for Christmas, somewhere with a business that resides in Ann Arbor. Infrastructure services, managed services. Go to all-lines-tech.com. Check them out.
All right, so going to some questions here. This one's coming from the real Uncle Tuna. Do you think Hartline would take a head coaching job elsewhere, or does he think the OSU job could be available sooner than later? Would he pull a Jim Leonard if he doesn't ultimately get the job, meaning that he would leave? Go ahead, Schlegs, is what your thoughts are on that and all.
Well, I'll just say this, man. I mean, Hartline, please, you're the best finisher in the business, Bob. I would say this. Brian's savvy, and he's only going to take a job, I would say, very similar to Fickle. Fickle waited. Fickle passed opportunities to get the right opportunity. And when you're at Ohio State, a place that you played at, an area in which you love, you don't need to leave right away to just go chase a title, meaning head coach, right? You want to go get the job that allows you to be successful in the areas that you're good at, which is what? Brian Hartline is a phenomenal recruiter. He knows the game. He understands everything that goes into a program. So he's going to bide his time for that opportunity. Does he think that the OSU job could be available sooner than later? I would say it has nothing to do with it, because I don't believe that he would just step in. Ryan had already done some offensive coordinator things before he got that, and then showed that when Urban was suspended for those 3 games. Go ahead, Bob.
So I think, number one, Brian's still a really young guy. And as you mentioned, Luke was very selective and he waited, because part of it too is you want to make sure that you're ready as a head coach. There's a lot of things that you need to ultimately learn. And not that I'm not saying that Brian isn't ready, but you can still continue to always learn and absorb more information and prepare yourself. I think what they would be alluding to is if Ryan got fired and Brian didn't get this job, or Ryan left for some reason. I don't see Ryan Day leaving. Now, this NIL thing, they've got to get it under control because I think it's going to drive a lot of guys out of college football potentially. But I don't see that happening where he would jettison, if something happened like that, and like feeling like he wouldn't be up and have an opportunity to go and fulfill his dream, and depending on what that is. And like you said, the why of what is your why? What do you ultimately want to do? Why do you do it? What are your ambitions, and understanding, like, you have one crack to start your head coaching path. Where do you want that to be, and how prepared do you think you need to be and ready do you need to be able to do it? So
Yep.
There's a lot ultimately there. We'll see. And mention Jim Leonhard, he's a guy that's floating around. I think he's an analyst right now at Illinois. If for some reason Jim Knowles leaves, and I know he was up for the Duke job, which they gave to Manny Diaz, which I was not a fan. I don't think that's a good hire. I know there's been some rumblings with him potentially down at A&M with Elko. If there's a job out there that he ultimately took, I would love to see Jim Leonhard here as well. Jim Knowles doing a great job, but if that job comes open, I think that would be a tremendous hire. This is coming from Nick Scroggins. How active do y'all expect Ohio State to be in the portal? What team needs does Ohio State have that could be filled by the portal? So, I think that they might need, Matt Jones has obviously gone at offensive guard. Maybe you need a guy there if you don't feel like you've developed, enough at this point. Maybe some running back depth. I think potentially some safety depth, Schlegs, depending.
Yep.
I think they would like to get Sonny Styles, possibly the linebacker. I mean, he's like on a dietary, he's calorie restrictive to stay at like 230 because he just is a muscular dude.
Yeah, he's a big dude, man.
He probably needs to be a linebacker, but to do that, you've got to ultimately make sure you have the safety depth to be able to get that done. So maybe you bring in, safety there. I know they brought in Jihad Carter last year, really didn't play much this year. And a lot of it depends on who leaves.
Yeah, for
sure. You have some really good corners. Like you have Lorenzo Styles, Sonny's brother, came in, who didn't really play a ton this year, but I think he'll be ready to go, maybe in the slot. We've got our guy, Jermaine Dupree Johnson, who I think everyone loves with what he's able to do. Very, very talented corner outside. You look at Jordan Hancock, Denzel Burr. I think they've got a lot of spots. I think people mostly look at quarterback, and I don't think that they're going to fill anybody there.
No, I agree with you. I don't think they should. I think I like what they have in the room. Competitive excellence. You want guys that want to be there. And I think that they're the driver. And again, that's what you see on a day in, day out basis. I think it's all predicated upon where they go in the portal, predicated upon who leaves. I think they're going to find that out very soon. And so once that does occur, I think then it will be selective as to who we get. There's a lot of big names out there. You have that there's the offensive tackle. That was a true freshman that started at Texas A&M. That's a guy that could potentially come in and go to right tackle and move Fryer into guard potentially. That's one. You have a defensive tackle that was from A&M. That was the #1 overall prospect. If Tyleek or Mike Hall leaves, he's somebody that you could bring in. I think you got to go look selectively of who are guys that are out there that want to go win, that want to be a part of Ohio State. Because again, it's just like free agency guys. Like when you have guys that come into an NFL organization, you're selling them everything that we're going to do to allow you to go maximize your value and extend your career while being there. The same thing holds true now because of the portal. It's like, hey, you come here, this is what we're about, and we're going to develop you to win these awards, to beat that team up north, to win the Big Ten, to go to the CFP, to ultimately allow you to go be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. That's the value proposition of going to an Ohio State. That's what they got to sell, but they got to be selective in doing so.
And the selectivity, as you mentioned, Schlegs, that's key. It's all about the fit. So the guys you're bringing in, they're leaving someplace. You want to make sure you understand the full reasons of why they're leaving, and then ultimately what you're getting as well. And then final question from Nick Seipel here. How long until guys figure out that most guys in the portal don't find homes with comparable opportunities? I mean, I think we're going to start to see that. Like 10% of college football, maybe 15 was in the portal. I don't know whether those numbers grow. There's like a spreadsheet that someone was showing me over at the Woody. I mean, it's crazy just how many guys are ultimately in there. And I don't know if they're able to find homes and what that looks like. And it stinks because you have an opportunity to go to college and to be a part of a team and maybe have a lot of success. You choose to leave that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what am I a part of it now?
Yeah. And here's the biggest thing too. For me, I believe that at some point this NIL thing is going to come in check, just like the housing market back in the day. At some point, business are going to be like, what is my ROI of paying athletes this? Are people
ROI
really
is
buying?
just watching your team win. I mean, that's
Right.
if you're winning.
But
You
guess
win
what? You
too.
gotta have money to be able to give it to them. You know what I'm saying? So that's
Yeah.
predicated upon our market and our business and our structure of our country. So I just think at some point it's going to level itself out. There's a lot of things that the people are talking about doing as far as like having a fund for everybody that's on scholarship. But again, the grass is not always greener. That's the thing.
It's not. And we'll check that out. We'll talk a little bit more about that, get some final thoughts and some sweet news in Columbus as there is a new champion in the MLS hoisting the cup. That'll reside right here in the 614. We'll finish up the show with that right here on the Big Play Network. All right, well, the Buckeyes are getting ready for bowl practice this week and grinding away. Coaches are getting recruiting. We've got the early signing day coming up, so we'll see how Ohio State's able to close out their class. Obviously, right before New Year's, we've got the Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl, so we'll keep you updated on all that. But yes, I'm here with probably the biggest crew fan in the city of Jacksonville, Mr. Anthony Frederick Schlegel. The Columbus Crew bring home, I believe, their third MLS Cup, their first one since 2020. This one was a COVID-free experience down at the brand new stadium, the Death Star, as we like to call it, lower.com. Yes. And man, it was a rainy, drizzly night, but dude, watching that thing on TV, it was rocking, and it was awesome to see them come home with a 2-1 victory.
Yeah, just awesome soccer weather, right? Just there in Columbus. I love the fact that it was played in Columbus. And for all the fans. And what I really took away from this was, to me, watching the game, I don't know a lot about soccer, but I do know this. It seemed like
space and anguish, Schlegs.
100%. That is what I know. And I would say this: Columbus really controlled the pace of that game. You're up 2-0 with 50
medium
minutes.
Pace.
Well, they really pushed it, Bob. And then here's the best: Schulte, their goalie, almost like literally Scott Sterling a kick right off his face, and they got the rebound, and that's how LAFC got their first goal. But again, to me, when I watch this and then the after thing, and I'm really wrapping it up, Aiden Morris, who's a Columbus guy, just standing on the field 2 hours after the game, pouring down rain, just soaking it in. Columbus gets their third cup. Awesome for the city. You know, you got the Jackets, you got the Crew, you got all things Buckeyes. It's a great sports town, Columbus, Ohio, 614.
It was pretty good, man. I went to the first Crew game, I believe, back in 1996, 5. I don't know what it was. It was at Ohio Stadium. It was 96. It was at Ohio Stadium. So I played a lot of soccer growing up. Didn't play football until I was in 7th grade. So it was awesome to see that. It's a great thing for the city, and you love that. In this lull, we've got some Buckeye hoops going on as they lost to Penn State earlier this weekend.
18 points.
It was rough. Dude, they had a nice lead. I was like not even really watching. Like, wait a second. It got close again. Didn't really like the way that felt. But Chris Holtman's doing a pretty good job this year. They've got some good young leaders, so I expect a lot out of this team. Sometimes you got to take some lumps early on too. And the Crew, they had obviously some issues and took some lumps at points this year. We're able to turn that thing and get it going. And it was awesome to see them hoist that cup. Like you mentioned, it wasn't necessarily the pristine weather you're going to see, but dude, you're playing a game in mid-December in Columbus, Ohio. So right. What do you think it's going to ultimately look like? Some recruits were coming through the Woody this weekend, and it's like, hey, they gave you the best weather we could get. It was overcast. It wasn't rainy yet, but I'm like, it's 50 degrees and it's in the middle of December in Columbus. And some of these guys are from Duluth, Minnesota. I guess this is like the tropics to you guys down here. It's fantastic. So thank you for watching the show with us today. Stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated, going through the bowl game recruiting portal, all the news you need right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show with my man, Anthony Schlegel.